Hey everyone, it's Casey. Welcome back to my channel. Today I have my Booktube-A-Thon Wrap Up. Booktube-A-Thon was my first ever reading challenge or reading-a-thon or anything like that. And I had so much fun with it. I really enjoyed it. I liked that it kind of gave me a fun pressure to read. Because sometimes I think my default mode is to come home and like watch TV and stuff. So it was nice to have some sort of incentive to come home and read after work. Um, Having said that, I did not succeed in the traditional sense. I didn't read, all 7 books, and I didn't meet all the challenges. But I'm really happy with what I read. I read 4.5 books, and they were all good, like quality books. I didn't read any book that I absolutely hated. So this was really fun, and it made me really excited to do other book-a-thons in the future. So let's just get right on into the books I read. I'll go in chronological order. So the first book I read was Sarah Plain and Tall by Patricia McLaughlin. This is the book that I read in one day, and I read it outside. And this was a really short book. It's only like 67 pages. It is told through a narrator. Her name's Anna, and she's 9 or 10. She lives in like the 19 teens-ish. And her mother has previously died. So her father puts out an advertisement to get a wife and to get a mother for Anna and her 6-year-old brother. And so a woman named Sarah answers the advertisement. She's from Maine, and so she comes out and to live with them for a month to just kind of to test the waters, I guess. And that's what Sarah Plain and Tall takes over that first month of her out visiting and whether or not she's going to stay and comparing. It's not said where this takes place, but it obviously takes place on a farm in like the Great Plains. I would say either Kansas or Nebraska. Or I guess Iowa it could be anywhere where they have farming. So it's kind of like how Sarah misses Maine and how oh my gosh, my neighbor just came out and I have my door open for lighting, and so he definitely thinks I'm a weirdo talking about a children's book. Anyway, I totally forgot where I left off. So this book takes place somewhere in the Midwest, and so a lot of it's about like how Sarah compares the Midwest to Maine and how she misses the sea, and it's also really about Anna kind of getting over the loss of her mother, not over it, but moving on and kind of getting over her death and the like her death being so traumatic to Anna. What I really took from this book, I've reread this several times since I was, in the 3rd grade or whatever. But I've never read it as a full-fledged adult. And what I really took from this was it's only 67 pages. And Patricia McLaughlin, what she does in the 67 pages is just remarkable. It did win the Newbery Prize back in like 85 when it was published. And rightfully so. It is beautifully written. The story is so simple for children, and yet it isn't like dumbed down to them. It's just a remarkable book. I really enjoyed it, and it was really comforting reading it again. It was almost like a warm hug from my childhood. I really loved rereading this. So much so that the second book I read was Skylark, which is the sequel to Sarah Plain and Tall. I read this one, I don't know what challenge necessarily they would meet. Maybe the character that's very different from me. Obviously, I'm not a pioneer woman. This book is a little bit longer than Sarah Plain and Tall. It's about 90 pages, and it's also a little bit darker than Sarah Plain and Tall. Skylark takes place about a year later than Sarah Plain and Tall, and it's really about kind of Sarah putting her roots into the Great Plains and into the farm where they live and the land. The story again is narrated by Anna, and it's more about they're going through a drought. And so it's about the impacts that has on the farm and their family, and just the stress of that on the adults and on the kids, because kids pick up on those fears that adults have, and they have them too. But it's also, like I said, about Sarah like putting down roots. And there's actually a really beautiful quote in here, because because Sarah's husband, whose name is Jacob, Anna's father, kind of gets onto her too about you haven't put your name in the land like I have, and also a friend of Sarah's, like probably her best friend in the place where they live, says a very similar thing. Let me find that real quick. Okay, so I found the quote. It's by her friend Maggie. You are like the prairie lark, you know. It sings its song above the land to let all the birds know it's there before it plunges down to earth to make its home. But you have not come to earth, Sarah. And that was kind of the quote that perfectly sums up this book, I think. It's just about Sarah stop thinking of her home as Maine, and really start making the prairie her home and to put her mark on the land. And as someone, I've moved around a lot of my life, and that's something that I think people easily fall into, is constantly comparing their next place to their last place or to the place they think home. But really at some point you have to assimilate. So I really enjoyed both of these books. I think they're great for kids. When I have a niece who, she's a little bit too young for these, she's 5, but when she's 8, I think I really want to, have her read these books and maybe do like a read along with her, because I think that's I don't know if she'd really like them, but I think that she should read them. Sometimes you have to read books, especially when you're a kid, that you may not necessarily be like dying to read, but that are good for you. So I think these are those books. The next book I read was Tales of Beetle the Barb. This is a Harry Potter companion. It's by J.K. Rowling. So this would be the book that I bought specifically for the cover. I had no plans whatsoever of ever reading this book, except for Booktube-A-Thon. So I did read it. It's a collection of like 5 or 6, I think 5, basically of wizarding fables. Like we have Cinderella, they have, Beetle the Barb, and these tales. They were really interesting. After each fairy tale was a little excerpt, I don't know why I'm showing you, it's just words, but of Dumbledore's notes. And those are what I really liked, of reading all the insight into them, and also, I guess just getting to spend a little more time with Dumbledore. He was one of my favorite characters in Harry Potter. So I really enjoyed this. It's not remarkable. Like, I have really nothing to say. The fairy tales were good and interesting. They're like fairy tales that we muggles have, except they have wizarding magic. But I am glad I read this. I do want to pick up, there's like 2 other books in the same like series. One's Fantastic Beasts and one is a book about Quidditch. And so I wanted to buy them for their covers and put with my other Harry Potter. But I think when I do buy them, I might actually read them because they're pretty good. The next book I read was, I actually listened to an audiobook, and it took me all week. I just finished it on Saturday, and that was Steinbrenner, The Last Line of Baseball. It's by Bill Madden. It is about George Steinbrenner, who owned the Yankees for like 32 years. And the book was interesting. I think it was very interesting because his personality and his like outspokenness reminds me a lot of President Trump, which I'm not saying, not political, like good or bad, but I think that was what was interesting, because a lot of the time, like, I had a real hard time not imagining like Donald Trump doing some of these things. So that was just a note that I made. But it wasn't my favorite baseball book I've ever read. I'm going to do, later in August, I'm going to do a book about my top 5 favorite baseball books. So I think I'm going to talk a little bit more in depth about it. Like I said, I did like it. It was a lot of material cover because he had owned the Yankees for like over 30 years. But it focused a lot on the Yankees of like the 70s and 80s and a little bit like the early 90s. And then it rapidly went through the Yankees of the 2000s, which are what I'm a fan of. I like, I like the Yankees from the Joe Torre days. So it like barely mentions Derek Jeter. It barely mentions A-Rod. And some of these really famous names to me of the Yankees, they get mentioned like twice. While I read like an entire chapter about Billy Martin. And also, Billy Martin gets fired as a manager from the Yankees about 17 times. So that was a little bit confusing, trying to keep up like then he'd be like, oh, Billy Martin was rehired. Okay, well, now what? I'm confused. So, I don't know. I liked it. Maybe I would have gotten more out of it in the physical form, but I don't think so. I think a lot of it, too, was just rehashing of news stories, because Bill Madden was the Yankees reporter for, I think, the New York Post, or the Daily Post. I don't know if those are the same thing. But, so a lot of it's just rehashing news stories when you see the Steinbrenner that the media saw, but you don't see the Steinbrenner about his family. Like, you don't know anything about, like, his kids and his family life. It briefly talks about his tumultuous relationship with his wife, but that's all you learn about his personal life. And you never really find out, like, what makes Steinbrenner tick. So that's what I wish. I read memoirs and biographies to really dive in deep about someone's, like, personal life and why they are the way that they are. And so I wish that book did a little bit more of that. But it was really interesting. Like I said, I've talked a lot about it, but I'll maybe talk even more about it in my baseball video that will probably go up at the end of August. So, like I said, I read 4.5 books. So the book that I only read a half of was A Wrinkle in Time. And I'm on chapter 7. I'm, like, exactly halfway through. I'm at 108, and there's, like, 200 pages. So I'm over halfway through, technically. I really like this book. It's really well written, but for some reason, I cannot, like, power through this, and I don't really want to power through it. I've basically been reading this book since Wednesday, and I'm shooting this Sunday morning, so, yeah. So I'm not gonna finish it today. I've already told myself I'm not. Technically, today's the last day of Booktube-A-Thon, but I'm not gonna force myself to, like, go through it, because I really am enjoying it. I think what's taking me so long is, like I said, if you saw my Booktube-A-Thon TBR, I knew nothing about what this book was going to be about before going in. I tried to read the back, but there's no blurb on the back. It's just, like, quotes of how good the book is. So I think that was the problem. I think I should have known a little bit going into it. Like, I should have, went on Goodreads and read the blurb or something. Because I've been really kind of hesitant to go into each chapter. Like, as I'm reading a chapter, I really like it, and then I'm like, I don't want to start the next one, because I'm kind of hesitant on, like, what's gonna happen, but not in, like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to find out what's gonna happen. I'm like, oh my god, what's gonna happen? I have no idea. So I don't know. I want to finish this book before I talk more about it, so I'll talk more about it in, I guess, my August wrap up, because I'm not gonna finish it in July. But I don't know. I'll have to maybe I'll do a standalone video about this, because I know it's being made into a movie, which is honestly the only reason why I read this book. But I am glad I read it. I don't know. I need to finish my thoughts, but just know this is the one that I'm, like, halfway through. So there were 2 books I did not get to on my TBR. I did not get to The Raven Boys, which I do want to get to, but yeah, I didn't. And also Geekerella. I did not get to either 2 of these. They're still, I do want to read them. They're probably, I might read them in August, but I also may put them off a little bit longer, because I have a ton of books I'm just, like, super excited for, and I'm not, like, super excited for any of these. Well, yeah, I'm just mildly excited. So anyway, that was my Booktube-A-Thon TBR. I'm really excited to do more Booktube-A-Thons. More Booktube-A-Thons or more reading-a-thons in the future. I really want to do Spook-A-Thon in October. Not because I like scary things, because I don't, but because Books and Lala is the one that hosts that, and she's, like, one of my favorite booktubers, so I want to support her this year that I have a channel. Anyway, so please subscribe and leave me a comment on maybe any of these books, but have you guys read this? Am I the only one that has, like, a weird, like, anxious feeling when I read this? I don't want to keep going. I don't know. Let me know your feelings on A Wrinkle in Time. Okay, bye.